board meeting for July 2015. Oh, say we're all doing okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We've got the Etherpad for the minutes and for everything that's going on. And there's been a very mild Twitter storm about this meeting going on. It's been a little while since we've all seen each other, but we've all been talking. The email lists have been very busy, including the meta conversations of whether we need an email list or something else. Very exciting. No final decision exactly, but we've certainly been using Basecamp a lot more. Hooray. Cool. I think we're appropriately welcomed. Are we good to carry on?
Thank you, Maya. I'm feeling very welcome.
Great. Okay, Anne Cregan and Nick Groen have apologised. Illustrious chair is being illustrious elsewhere. Anne Cregan also can't make it. I don't know of any other apologies. Everyone else seems to be here.
James isn't.
James isn't. No James. Oh, well, I'm sure he's very sorry.
But we have a quorum, so that's good.
Alrighty. Okay. Finance update. Please, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, thanks. So I put that in just to quickly talk, from the Treasurer's perspective, not that I'm doing anything active at this second. The intention is to move to a zero paid monthly subscription and make everything 100% transparent. We're just waiting on connecting to a bank account, which is where Anna's going to update us in a sec. And from the first sort of week, as soon as we've got the bank account, we'll set up that zero account. Look into whether we can provide read access to a general account that people can access. And then, different levels of access for those who hold positions of delegation, I should say, to access the bank accounts and things. My operations manager at Link will do the bookkeeping, if that's cool, just to, because we use Xero for our business stuff and it'll just be easy. And that takes some pressure off Nikta pretty quickly. So if everyone was generally happy with that, that's the approach I'd like to take. There might be something for Michael and Anna to add on that if that sounds fine for them and what transition we need to accommodate for that. If people accept that's a decent idea.
Yeah, it's fine with us, obviously, Steve. Yeah, if you're happy to do that.
Yeah.
We're happy to do you, but if you want to take that on, that's fine.
And there's probably two other points just to add to that. It's a little bit preliminary, but within Xero we'd be creating budgeted items. So where we take donations, sponsorships, however you want to call it, allocations, where they're for a specific purpose, such as, a good example is development of OK activities in Melbourne, where a local jurisdiction might be sponsoring that activity. We create a budget item, but whilst cash can go into a single account, it would get allocated against those budgets and we can track it quite easily as to when it expires and runs low, and obviously what's left. And the other thing is there is some cleaning up of the account once we get it in place, just to recognise some previous sponsorship that's come through from Victoria and allocate that appropriately into such a budget item. And that will all be cleaned up as soon as we're sort of on and running with it.
Yeah, that sounds great. Really appreciate that, Stephen.
Cool.
Yeah, it sounds like a brilliant thing to do. Thank you.
Yep, same, ditto.
Great. Do we have anything from Nikta in particular?
We've got a few developments that we've come across this morning. Did you want me to explain? Yeah. So in regards to the bank account, I contacted Commonwealth Bank again, and things seem to be up in the air a bit. We're meant to do an ASIC check because we don't have an ABN number. So for some reason,
But
they
to
told
be
us-
incorporated, we had to have an ABN. We should have an ABN.
Well, apparently in corporations, it's not compulsory for us to have ABN. We did talk to someone from ASIC, was it, or AGO, who recommended we do get an ABN. It's useful for things like if we want to apply for government grants. So I'm happy to go ahead and register us for an ABN number. It will take up to 28 days for us to get this. And then once I have that, I'll go back to the Commonwealth Bank and restart the whole account creation process. Also, we need to look at whether or not we are tax exempt, and I've provided this link there for us to look at, and we can do our own kind of check to see if we are. So yeah, that's our updates really. You can have a look at that link, and yeah, tell me your thoughts about the whole ABN number.
I think it's probably easier if, Steve, if you and Anna and I just get together. There's a self-assessment process that the tax office have on their website. If we just step through that, rather than, I mean, anyone can have a look at it. You're welcome to, but it's probably up to us just to resolve that. And as Anna just said, it's probably in our interest to apply and have an ABN when the account is registered. What will happen is there'll be a form registered at the Commonwealth Bank that anyone who is going to be transacting on the account, or anyone who you think may in future, they'll need to have their signature registered at the Commonwealth Bank. And the way they do that is go into the bank will pull up this online form that will register, and board members will add their signature, verified signature, into the form. So once that form is distributed or online at the bank, we'll let you all know. As Anna said, it won't be for about 28 days until we get this ABN registered, or the ABN allocated, I should say, and so we can incorporate that into the form that has to be sent around.
Okay. Well, I put that as an action under point 7, and I just ask if I can get Angela to come along to that meeting, we can do a preliminary transition or a transfer of knowledge.
Yep.
Maybe look at the accounts directly and look at these books and just know where we're at. And that way, one of the things I've mentioned in the OK list is that people should be holding on to receipts where they're expending things, because we can retrospectively accommodate expenses if we've got budget. And we can formalise that a little bit ahead of the 28 days and give some people some consistency and understanding about how they can spend money if we have some money in the account.
Okay. I'll get Anna to set up a meeting for the three of us, Steve, sometime. That's mutually convenient next week or two.
I had understood that we had an ABN, but I may have got my wires crossed. It was a discussion we had, but it may never have happened. The other thing is with the tax exemption, the link you've posted, Anna, I notice it mentions registration with the ACNC. You definitely need an ABN in order to register with the ACNC for tax exemption status. And I do know that form reasonably well, having worked there, so if you would like any help with that, yeah, I'm very happy to assist.
Thanks, Anne, that's great. Yeah, there was some confusion because when we originally started the process of creating an account, the Commonwealth Bank said that they would check whether we had an ABN, and we weren't sure whether the incorporation process through Consumer Affairs in Victoria, as part of that we would have been allocated an ABN, but we've been able to track all of that through and identify that no, we definitely don't, and that we should.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all, Steve, on where we're at with the account.
All right, I just added another action for Fiona and I to have a quick chat about what she just mentioned, so I can understand it fully, and we'll just take that offline and add it into the mix.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So that sounds like we at least have a little bit of clarity in some ways going forward. Thanks, everyone. That's a lot of work carrying on in the background. especially thanks to everyone at NICTA for progressing this. It's an exciting time to get all this happening. While we're on the topic, I know there's been a few conversations about how much money we've got in the bank and how that gets spent, and we've had a lot of situations where people create blog posts of events as a way to get events financed. That's been a conversation that, well, that was a decision that the board made a while ago, and that's been our policy for some time. Is that something that a board needs to revisit at some stage once we've got finances clarified?
No.
Sorry, I missed that a little bit. Was it just to clarify the process for spending and reimbursements?
Yeah, but yes, I was just wondering whether we need to re-clarify the process and spending once we've got a sense of what our bank balance is. I know we've had a few conversations about this.
Definitely. I just put that as an action item for me under the summary of action items. So we'll do the first 2 points once I see the accounts with NICTA and work on it with Angela, my ops manager. We'll then know what we should be able to do, even if we don't have an ABN. And then I'll communicate it via a blog post and share it on the OK list. But share it over the Basecamp initially, just to get a tacit approval, if nothing else, from the board, and then put it out there.
Sounds great.
So just while we're on that, Steve, just a reminder that we did email you a couple of weeks ago because we received a reimbursement claim from Lachlan in Melbourne, which initially we thought was associated with GovHack, but it became obvious that it wasn't. It was just through OK activities in Melbourne. And it raised a couple of points. The point that Anne's raising about what is our process for approval of the expenses, and secondly, have we got clarification around the funding that is available to Open Knowledge, which we understood was the balance from last year's GovHack event, but I've not seen that in writing anywhere.
So I've had conversations with Maya, Fiona, Pia, generally about this stuff, and I think once we catch up at NICTA, we can sort it out and then re-clarify with everyone. But what I understand is there's no blockers to working it out. There's just detail that needs to be known. So there was conversation about how much was allocated from last year's GovHack. There's an uncertainty about how much of that might have been spent because we can't see how much has been spent. There is a known sponsorship from Victoria that went in as an allocation that should be spent back into Victoria. There's also a conversation from GovHack from this year saying that they put 5,000 into NICTA. So we just have to get those 3 points clarified and find out how it all settles.
Yeah, there was some money, Michael, from the funding that the Victorian government supplied to GovHack Victoria last year that was to be set aside for community development activities in Victoria and was not to go into sort of GovHack Central, although obviously, it's all one account, so, one pot of money. And I understand that as part of their funding agreement for GovHack Victoria again this year, there was some money for that ongoing community activity. So it's just a matter of making sure that it's clear how much that money is, and that was what Lachlan was claiming against.
Did you see, I had help from Anna Belgin going through past spreadsheets of ours, and I sent you guys an email, or Fiona, sorry, on the 30th of June. So what we worked out, apparently there was around $6,270 left for Melbourne. Does that sound about right?
I didn't think it was quite that much, but if that's the figure you landed at,
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, we can't really claim to be 100% accurate, just given there were so many changes and stuff, and not too sure if everything was kept up to date. But that's just based on what we could see.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds great. I'm very happy for there to be more money rather than less.
Yeah. Seeing as we thought the number was lower, we'll take every cent that comes.
Yeah,
All right,
okay.
shall we end the discussions for now?
Yeah, I think so. We've got 3 clear action points, so pretty cool.
Great. Okay. All right. Next on updates, actions from last meeting. So the main two last meeting actions were setting up Basecamp and setting up a blog post for community to discuss the notion of rotating board positions. The Basecamp is well alive. The rotating board positions is actually definitely being in discussion, and we've got that as an item later on. In fact, this is actually the item. You know what? Let's just talk about it.
It's actually under item 5 as well, Maya, so
Oh,
up to you.
okay. Planning, cool. How about we go through other things and come back to that? Does that sound all right?
Yep, it's fine.
Network and community. Stephen, website list updates and discussions.
I put that in with the intention to do a review of all the conversations that have happened over the last 4 months, which I haven't done, but the intention there is really to try and, I've taken a number of conversations to try and identify what would be good blog posts. I've contacted a couple of people to ask them whether they'd like to write on that topic. Over the last 4 months, I just haven't coordinated them and sort of followed up with everyone consistently to get it actually done. That's something I'd like to do, certainly over the next sort of 6 weeks. The other thing is just, I got access as an admin to the list, and I was going to report on the numbers of subscribers consistently every quarter. And what I'll do is probably add that to the minutes after the fact and put those numbers in when we do the blog post, just so people can see how many people are subscribed to the list.
Sounds great. Thank you. Okay. Next item is yours too, Stephen. Feedback on OKAU.
Oh, yeah. So if people remember, there was feedback from James a while back about how when we kicked off OKAU, we had a flurry of activity to identify and pin people down as ambassadors and such. And for a number of people who got involved, there was just a vacuum of activity after the fact. And now that we're starting to grow a little bit more now, with Melbourne going so well, things beginning to kick off potentially in Brisbane and Sydney, and I just got back from Adelaide yesterday, and there was interest in Adelaide from the sort of preliminary, non-committed interest from the government to help support something there. And I think if we do this, we should start to plan this at a more local level and re-engage with ambassadors, reconnect with them, and actively support them as we can, rather than just canvass the whole country, get everyone we possibly can, and then kind of not work with them. So that was the main feedback. That there have been a couple of people now over the last 12 months really that have pointed out the lack of support from the national representation, if that's the right word. And I think the solution to that is that when we help seed something locally, if we can do that, we make sure there's a good network of people and they're supported. They get the dollars, they get the support in engaging with government or business in their local region, and all of that just happens naturally. And perhaps an example of that is in Canberra on the 13th of May, I ran that event to pull a couple of speakers together. If we were going to help somewhere like South Australia kick something off, then the board should try and pull together some really good speakers and run an event in that area to help kick off the weekly, fortnightly, or monthly regular meetups.
That's one of the topics I had in mind too in my suggestion box under item 5, so I'd love to come back to that.
Okay. Look, I think it's definitely a conversation that we need to have around what is the purpose of the board versus the rest of the community, and how do we stick to our goals of being an upside-down umbrella organization that supports local upswell while actually doing strategic planning and appropriate kind of support. So I think you're right. We can come back to that while we're talking about board position and purpose and other lofty principles. Right. Okay. Moving on. Fiona, would you like to give us an update about the Melbourne meetups?
Yeah, we're meeting weekly at the moment in Melbourne after the flurry of trainings, I suppose, in the lead up to GovHack, where we had focused on tools and techniques which might be useful for people who are coming along to GovHack in the hope of supporting people to make better use of the time over that weekend, spend a little less time wondering what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. We've returned to more of a sort of shut up and hack model for the last few weeks, which has been really nice. Some people focusing on their GovHack projects, doing a bit more tinkering with them. I've been writing funding applications, which hasn't been a lot of fun, but it does need to happen. So, yeah, that slightly smaller meetups post GovHack with just the shut up and hack model. But yeah, we were getting really big numbers with pre-GovHack. We got 70 people along to a data visualization meetup, which I think is perhaps a reflection of how much interest there is in data viz at the moment. And we had some very good speakers demonstrating. But yeah, it's a really strong group. Matt Sen in Melbourne has also proposed an open knowledge mini conference as part of LinuxCon next February. So I'm not sure when the answer to call for papers on that comes back, but he's suggested that. Next,
Sorry, I was just going to say Linux conference is in Geelong, and if anyone's interested in being involved in the Open Knowledge mini conference, please contact Matt Sengia. We'd love to have a bunch of different kinds of projects and types of work that we do represented.
Yeah, so we've got VicRoads coming along this week to the meetup to launch a hackathon which they're doing. Hoping, I think, to do something a little bit more like Vic Tripathon, which Steve Bennett and I were involved with in more of a private capacity, but moving away from the sort of the 48-hour hackathon model to a more sort of a slightly longer-term incubator model. And we had quite a lot of participation from Oren at GovHack this year, and they were really happy with the way it all went and are keen to work with us further, which is, yeah, really promising. So that's, I put OKFest 2016 under point 5, but yeah, that's most of what we're doing in Melbourne at the moment.
That is very cool.
I'm also jealous of Melbourne. When I was there, things were awesome, and now that I've left, things are even more awesome.
Oh, we miss you, Maya.
Yeah, I miss you too.
Yeah, well done, Fiona. Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's really going incredibly well, and yeah, having, I guess, that sort of critical mass of local organisers has made a big difference. That, you know, if somebody's got a cold one week, the whole thing doesn't fall in a heap because, you know, there are enough of us to keep it ticking along now.
So other things that are happening in Melbourne as well as other places is HealthHack. As I've been letting everyone know for about a year, I finally am actually leaving the country in a couple of weeks. And HealthHack is carrying on beautifully, actually. It's going on this year in October 23rd to 26th in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane and Perth. And there are local organisers in each city as well as the overall organisers who are Fiona and one of our shining new stars of open knowledge, Mitch Stanton, who's also, among other things, organised the open knowledge meetups in Brisbane, and a little bit like the GovHack meetups, and there's going to be a series of how-to events happening here in Brisbane starting next Thursday the 16th. Most of them will be happening at River City Labs, and they're how to tech and how to science streams ongoing. it's simultaneously, which is very exciting. So, you know, big groundswell community stuff happening up here as well. I'm delighted about it.
Nice.
So given that Brisbane is sort of kicking off at the moment, is this a good way to test how we support, an emerging meetup group, and sort of, make sure that we share the lessons from what's been successful in Melbourne? And I know that's probably seeding through outside of this channel, but I'm just thinking about, one of the successes of GovPack when it was doing local satellite events is that they started to document things and create those sharing documents that anyone kicking off a new event can start to read and get an idea of what they do to run a local event. Is that something we could look at for what's happening now with Brisbane?
It sounds like a great idea. The first of these events is happening next week, and I know that Mitch and Fiona have a fair bit to do with each other one way or another around Health Hack. So I imagine there's a lot of learning sharing going on, and I've done what I can to pass on my meager learnings of the weekly hangouts. But I think how to support emerging groups is a very good point, and there's probably a whole heap of how-tos around that.
I think Dave Flanders had, like a startup pack as well. Steve, did all of that get passed to you?
I don't remember seeing that, but I can definitely get in touch with him and find out if he's still got it.
There is an induction pack for people who are sort of coming on, and one of our, or a couple of people in the Melbourne community have actually been reviewing that as part of our Shut Up and Hack activities, because there were two versions, and I think Sarah is trying to consolidate and update that induction pack, so I can check in with her how that's going and make sure Mitch gets it.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I've shared the induction pack, the old one, with Mitch, obviously, but I think there's probably a whole heap he could learn from this kind of thing. You're quite right, and anyone else for that matter.
And can you CC that with everyone on the board, just so we all know what it is and can see it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
And just out of potential interest for everybody, I think, Steve, you might know this, but Open Data Institute is established in Australia, just in Queensland at this stage. And I met the lady who's running that up there. Yeah. And they've got a pretty active program as well that hopefully we can sort of coordinate with or align with.
Yeah, they came down to the Canberra event on the 13th of May, and Marie had a speaking spot for that.
Yeah.
And we were trying to organise an event in Brisbane at ODI on the 9th of July. It didn't come through because one of the speakers we hoped to have wasn't sort of ready for it. That might be possible a little bit later. So when I was mentioning, doing an okay sort of central assistance package for someone like for emerging like Brisbane, that's kind of what I had in the back of my mind, that we can pull together a bunch of speakers and maybe get someone like Fiona or Nick up there paid to fly up and sort of help seed it and help kick it off. But Maya's got there as well, so in general it's probably going quite fine.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, Stephen, if you wouldn't mind putting the Brisbane folk in touch, in touch with the Queensland Open Knowledge people, I think that's great. I think they already all know each other.
Yeah.
I don't count myself among the numbers just because I am, in fact, disappearing in a minute.
Yeah, well, there's we're doing work with Brisbane City Council, so there's a bunch of people there I can intro them to if they don't already know them, and the ODI people, of course. The ODI folks are active, or if not, sort of lurking on the list as well. So they should all know of each other a little bit. But yeah, I'll take that as an action item.
Yeah. We'll work with Steve to do that.
Great, thank you. Okay. Does anyone else have anything to say under network and community before we move on?
I'll add one more thing. I had a quick chat with Alvaro from Code for Australia with the idea of doing hack days in Canberra. He just mentioned that they've had interests from various, whether it's private sector or government or institutions in Canberra, asking what Code for Australia is doing in this area. So we might look into that over the next sort of 4 weeks. I'm just working out whether I've got time, and I need to talk to my staff to see if they can help on a roster. And then we'd probably host it here at Link every fortnight or something like that. But I didn't want to sort of go too far with that and overpromise and underdeliver. I need to try and start it before I say that it's happening.
Yeah, Alvaro's approached us a few times over the last 6 months, Steve, and just a couple of days ago about establishing a base here in Canberra as well.
Yeah, so I think it's possible. I probably just need a week to get rid of my backlog and see if I can do it.
Yeah, we've been flat out with GovHack, doing all of the behind-the-scenes admin and finance management. Really haven't had much capacity to do anything beyond that. It was meant, just out of interest for people, it was meant to be a lot easier this year because the process. We reviewed the process from previous years and came up with what we thought was a simpler way to do it, which has probably been slightly simpler, but still pretty time-consuming. Anyway, we're happy to do it. It just doesn't give us much capacity to do much beyond that through that intense period of a few months.
So I'm just seeing some tweets from Steve Bennett and Matt Sengio in Melbourne saying they can't find the Hangout.
It should be
Stephen
there.
emailed that out, yeah.
I tweeted it on the OKAU one,
Right.
tested it. So that link is there if you just quote that tweet.
Maybe try it again. Okay. Cool. Alrighty, halfway through. We've actually done remarkably well time-wise. Moving on. Then you were going to speak about GovHack 2016. Speaking of things like Canberra and GovHacks and government.
Yeah, so I mean, 2016, the vision for OKAU from the get-go was to try and support things as big as GovHack and provide that administrative or governance facility. So things like bookkeeping, things like insurances. My hope is still that if we can get Xero up and running and we can do budgets and we can process things, the additional overhead for a small business like Link might not be as hard to manage as it is for someone like Nick, because we're kind of used to doing processing payments and stuff like that for all sorts of things at that lower level, I guess, if that's the right way of talking about it. So I still think that we can very quickly get into a position to help GovHack 2016, but it's still only after the red carpet that we should really sit down with the folks and see if it's feasible. Obviously, they're working with Linux Australia to provide a whole bunch of support, and that could grow into 2016. That's their decision. But if we're serious, then we should be pitching to say, we're here, we're willing to help, and we're passionate about it. I think in my mind, OKAU is better aligned with GovHack than Linux Australia, even though open source and open knowledge have the same sort of DNA. I just think it's a great opportunity for this group to really tackle something like GovHack and make it more successful over fully 365 days, not just the 48 hours.
Yeah, I agree, Steve. I think that open knowledge won't really flourish until we have a permanent staff member. Now that might not be full time, but somebody who can, sort of distill the strategic directions from the board and and get things happening. You know, whether it be applying for grants or managing GovHack as more as an annual program, things like that. I mean, I appreciate the offer that you're making that your business takes more of a role, but I think, as I say, we need our own staff and kind of identity.
Yeah, and I think that would be fine. But we still need to be lean and do everything we can where people offer it for free. So
Yeah, for sure.
and there is a question, you know, even with GovHack, it gets so big. The question of how much you invest in something like that to administer it versus how much you get out of it, and some things can be more linear if they're kept more local.
I think one of the strengths of GovHack is the volunteer component, you know, and just tapping into that community passion. So I don't want to ameliorate that at all. But you can see how progressive ODI is in Queensland just by having a dedicated staff member and all of the good things that they're doing, and it's you know, continuous. It's not sporadic. And I think that's you know, important for
it's also a different beast. ODI is effectively a commercial sort of ongoing business in some sense.
Yep.
So, you know, that's not the mission of knowledge.
It's also again, we're not GovHack, we're Open Knowledge, but we're not GovHack. So it's a bit of it's a big discussion, and maybe we can take the guts of that offline.
Yeah.
All right. So it sounds like we definitely need to have more of a discussion about that. I know we've been talking about how to keep Health Hack going beyond just a weekend hackathon as well. So, and that's again to serve the needs of all the people who participate and all the people who get involved. So, good discussion. Talk about that later. Thanks everyone. Thanks for raising it. While we're on it, can we briefly talk about the red carpet catch-up for post-GovHack, Stephen?
Yeah. Oh, yes. That was always mentioned from, you know, Dave mentioned it right at the get-go to say that he was hoping to have a login type session. I still think that's a fantastic idea. So I wanted to put it there and see who's able, who's willing to come along to the GovHack red carpet event and maybe stay an extra night and, you know, catch up for brunch and do something and, you know, spend a couple of hours together and work through some of these things.
I would really like to do that, and if it's possible for us to support some of the local organisers, or I mean, get someone like Mitch. I'm not sure if he was particularly involved with GovHack, but you know, who is becoming such a powerhouse in Brisbane, and I think that would be a really good way of supporting those local groups, which are, you know, look like they are starting to emerge. Would be to get everyone together. I mean, at an event like the red carpet, perhaps, where we all get to rock up and have a nice evening together. But also, if we could have, yeah, some time together to talk, you know, share ideas.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't be a board thing. It's just an open event that anyone should be able to come and they'll have an equal say.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any sort of endowed delegation by being on the board. We're just the suckers who are doing some work. Anyone can contribute with whatever energy they've got and ideas.
Yeah, we'll definitely be there, Steve.
Cool.
I don't know whether the Brisbane GovHack organisers are planning to make it. I expect they are. It's not huge, but I suspect that they'll be very keen.
Cool. It's 5th of September. It's 5th of September, isn't it? The red carpet in Sydney.
Yeah, not sure where yet, unless it has been settled. They were looking for a location.
Great. Okay. Well, I'll have a chat with Mitch as well, because I think he'd love to be there. Despite not having organised GovHack, it would be really good for him to meet everyone. Right. We are at 20 minutes left, so let's get through everything else quickly. One of the main issues we need to speak about is the rotation of board members. So, shall we talk about that first before we get to everything else?
Yes. If someone can bring up the blog post, I'm just trying to find it myself. There were some comments on it.
While that's happening, the short version is it's about time for us to rotate board members. And you know what? I can start by saying I'm leaving the country, and it'd be a real shame if I stayed on as name only. I'd really love to hang around and actually be of value. But I think it's very much time I stop pretending that I'm doing much more than occasionally chipping in on discussions. I'd love to stay on as some kind of, I don't know, international liaison or some such, but realistically, I'm not contributing very much to the board from now on for a bit.
Where are you off to?
Uganda.
Wow.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm going for 12 months with work, and the plan is to come back to Australia after 12 months.
To the capital, Nairobi?
The capital, Kampala. Nairobi's next door. Yeah.
Wow. Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay.
Anyone got blog?
I was just quickly rereading the comments on the board nominations blog post. But basically, what I proposed was that every 6 months or something like that, we rotate a number of board members, or basically people. So if we have 9 people, then every 4 months, say 3 people, their positions are up for contest, and then anyone else can nominate, and there's some sort of open process for how those nominations are handled and who gets the seats.
So
people could re-nominate themselves to try and retain the position, but it's somewhat open.
So from my perspective, Stephen, just on that point, so I deal with a bunch of different boards, and the benefit of rotating board members is really, really good. The downside is having people with no experience coming onto the board. It takes them a while to ramp up, and then when they get experience, there's a time you're kicking them off. So there's a really interesting sort of dynamic about timing and balancing those things. Everything else I totally agree with. Rotating the board's always a good thing. Losing board knowledge is from the board itself. I mean, the board as a governance entity is maybe it's not the right way to think of it as the board. It's a steering committee or something. And the other part is, of course, at the moment we're meeting every 3 months, and if we have a 4-month term, every board member goes to 1 meeting.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the points that we're meeting every 3 months for these sorts of town hall public discussions, but an active board should be discussing a whole lot of things and actually working on action items throughout that period. So one of the things I'd hope is that if we were to rotate in 3 new people every 4 months, those people are already coming with an intent, with an energy. They might be starting up their own group in a location, and they want to make sure that they're sort of in touch and contributing as much as they can to make their local community activities healthy. And we should be providing that opportunity. And people could rotate out, rotate back in. We just have to have some mechanism. Like not having a mechanism is a massive failure in my book.
Oh yeah.
And we just don't have one at the moment. So we have to pick one, even if it has negativity or negative aspects to it. We just need something.
Yeah. No. Do not disagree about having a mechanism is important. I just think the parameters need a bit of thought.
I agree.
That if we call it the public consultation, it didn't really come up with anything concrete. So I think we should just take it as an action item out of this to determine one and to put it out there as this is what we're going to run with for, say, the next 12 months. Then it could be reviewed after 12 months. Would that be an okay way to do it?
I agree with the rotation, that it's essential. I think it should be a 12-monthly basis, Steve, as a minimum, not 4 months. And I think it should be like a nomination process. That, for example, someone does a stint as an ambassador, they would be a fantastic person to then move on to the board. Some process like that.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, and as long as we don't have all of the board members rotate out at once, information, and let's all remember that people who they just let the board to feel contactable.
Okay. Well, perhaps for now we'll just take it as an action item to talk about this in the base camp and mutually agree on something.
Great. Okay. Fantastic. I know while we're on it, I know Annie Cregan was stepping down. Do we have any other board members that have any announcements?
No.
Cool. Moving on. Alrighty. Marcus, next couple of items are yours, and we have 10 minutes.
Cool. All right. So.
I don't know whether this is happening for others, but
Yeah, I've just got a ferocious echo.
Yeah, same. Oh, I've got a delay.
Testing 2 3 4. Still there.
Okay. How are we doing now? Any better?
Hello. That's
Yep, that's good.
good. Nope.
Yep.
Still getting it. Can I just ask everyone else just to briefly mute on the call, and then I'll mute when I finish talking.
Yep.
What did he say?
Sorry, we didn't catch that.
We couldn't. That was doubled up, so we didn't understand what was asked then.
So I was just suggesting everybody else could mute.
Okay, sure.
However, the problem seems to have gone away by somebody else muting. So okay. All right. So just quickly, the two topics I raised. So wearing my other hats, I'm actually involved in a couple of industry associations that are sort of membership-based organisations, and I'm the GM of one and the CEO of another in the research space. And part of the conversations you have a lot in that space is about the whole value proposition of your organisation and about what you do. And then you kind of think about, well, what do we do and how do we do it? You know, what resources have we got? And I was thinking about the roles of the ambassadors and the functions they provide. And I've known a couple of ambassadors who are dead set, keen, passionate, and they've got particular things they focus on. And then there's a bunch of other ambassadors who go, I'm an ambassador, now what? So I wondered about trying to define some useful functions and roles and activities which then lead to something that the board centrally can support in a more strategic way. Now, many of you are familiar with ANZ, the Australian National Data Service, in relation to research, and they talk about, you know, the way they support data activities around making it discoverable, manageable, reusable, accessible, and things like that, which I think are useful themes. The other part is, I think, the ambassadors that we have, some have very strong skills and resources, some of them have a lot of knowledge without the resources, and then you have a much bigger halo of people with enthusiasms. And so I was wondering about trying to define, you know, a certain set of activities, and I think, I forget who made the comment, but Steve, you reacted to it. Somebody tweeted about a name and shame activity for government data sets, you know, which we then sort of paraphrased into something much more friendly. And I thought there's probably a way of providing, if you like, data support ambassadors or data guardian ambassadors or something like that, that provide transitional support. You know, there's the one about making data discoverable. So where is the National Register of Data Sets? Well, we currently have about 10 or 15 of those. But there's more data sets out there, and how do we help find them? And that's a people problem. Then there's the problem that those people have is making their data accessible, and so there's a data access API support kind of conversation. Then there's data management and reusability and standards and all those sorts of things. And again, there's people with expertise in those spaces. And I know some of the ambassadors can tackle particular parts of that, but if you can start to draw together a particular story around all of those activities, I think it gives us something we can do in the middle, and it gives the ambassadors some clearer targets and activities to perhaps pursue. I'm going to pause on that point because we're running out of time and see if there's any comments on that before I try and expand it into a blog post or something. You have to unmute if you're going to give me comments.
Thanks for that, Marcus. Does anyone have any comments quickly?
I've got one quick comment. I haven't put it on the OKAU blog yet, but I put it out on the list to say that I'd launched something in Ottawa at the International Open Data Conference, which is the Published Data Cookbook. And the idea is just to create recipes for specific publishing tasks or publishing outcomes when it comes to data. The reason why I thought that might be helpful is because, you know, working with clients, we have very specific needs in each scenario, and it's not like the general tools and tips meet every situation. So it just kind of got me thinking about, you know, recipes, and, you know, you use a particular recipe for a particular kind of outcome that you want, whether you're seeding for a dinner of 4 or a dinner of 50. And if, you know, this aligns, your thinking aligns with the Published Data Cookbook, it would be fantastic to push that out as much as possible and get people to contribute to it. It's a very simple model, and maybe that's a starting point. The narrative then could perhaps come later.
I would certainly love to include that. I think that aligns really well.
What I heard from Marcus, the way I'm interpreting that is a bit of a who's who in the sort of ecosystem in Australia. You know, where are data sets, who's good on this particular aspect, who's good on that particular aspect, people that we know who are supportive of the open knowledge movement, so that you know, people can sort of contact others directly to help.
Yeah, we've been talking. That's a great idea. We'd been talking about doing something like that in Melbourne a little while ago, as creating some kind of almost a gateway for all the different open, you name it, groups. So it sounds like there's definitely a call for it. I'm also aware it's 11:55. Does anyone want to take that on as an action to carry that forward?
I'll take it.
Great. Fantastic.
Fantastic,
Okay.
thanks.
All right, 2.5 minutes. Well, let's make it 2 minutes each. One for Marcus about strategic open data, open method projects, and 2 minutes for Fiona talking about OKFest.
Cool. Admire, I think you'll have to mute. I think you'll have to mute. Thanks. All right. The strategic project thing was the flip side of thinking about the people and the resources, and that is about having some targeted activities. And I love a good moonshot kind of project, which unfortunately has been taken as a name by the Project Moonshot. But I thought there's probably some interesting things we could do, and GovHack is a really nice kernel that you can crystallize around. And then I thought there's probably other things you can do with a bunch of open data sets and a bunch of open tools. And the one that really leapt to mind, and it's probably one of a bunch, but the one that I really like is the intergenerational report and the conversation we had about that in a whole bunch of interesting forums recently. And just reading through it, what it's basically about is a bunch of data sets, it's a bunch of tools to present the data, and a bunch of models that fit that data. All of which could be made open, all of which could be community sourced, all of which could be community contributed to. So I'm wondering if there's something that we can do that doesn't take 5 years on a 5-year cycle, something like an open intergenerational report activity. I think that would be awesome fun, and there goes my 2 minutes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marcus. Do you want to take it on as an action to follow up around interest, perhaps either via the discussion lists or blog post?
Absolutely.
Great. All right, Fiona, your turn while I mute myself.
I was just going to add one thing to that. The Open Data Index, particularly the local census, would be a great place to start, because Stephen Gates would like a lot of help, and if we could promote that as much as possible and get a lot of content into that. It's only got about 80 about 6.
Yep. Look, I'm sure there's a bunch of dips that could funnel into that. 2 minutes to go. Let's leave discussion for now. And please forward all of your ideas to Marcus. Fiona?
You're muted, Fiona.
Oh no, we've
You're
lost
muted
Fiona.
somewhere else, Fiona. You're muted somewhere else, Fiona.
No, I think Fiona might have. I think we might have lost Fiona. Okay. Okay. Well, just looking at Fiona's notes, City of Melbourne's keen to support OK Fest 2016, which is great. Fiona's meeting with Lorraine Tai on Thursday. If anyone's got thoughts or ideas for OK Fest, please get in touch with Fiona Tweedy. We all know how to do that. We have an internet. Cool. Does anyone have anything else that they'd like to say before we kind of start wrapping up?
All good here. Thanks, Matt.
All good here. Thanks, Matt.
I'd just like to suggest. We just want to wrap up the minutes within the next week. So I'll publish them on Basecamp, and if everyone could please review them. Oh, sorry, I or Anna will publish them on Basecamp. We just need to review them, approve them. We might do it over email, actually, just to get the sort of replies coming through easy. And then we can put them on the blog post as approved minutes. That's all.
Yep, sounds great. Minutes online, please go ahead and add. Great, I think rock on, everyone. We've had yet another successful board meeting that went on time and on budget. Can everyone actually